one of my boys was like, yo, if Francis does lose this fight, it could set up Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. After the end of the fight, that is a fight I never in my life want to see. I do not want to see Francis versus Derek. That would literally remind me of Kimbo versus Dada. You remember how Kimbo and Dada both gassed out and one of them like had a fucking heart attack in the ring? If Francis Ngannou fought fucking Derek Lewis, bro, I'm a fan of both of them. It's not going to be pretty.
Or is this full-time MMA now?
I love full-time MMA right now.
Full-time MMA? Nothing else.
My life, man, yeah.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, because you know what time it is. It's full-time
MMA.
And it's your boy Mystic Taco Bell Wani, and what you heard in the beginning of this video was me predicting what was going to happen at UFC 226 between Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. You know who I have to blame now? Dana White seems to be blaming Francis Ngannou's ego for his lackluster performances, and that could be something to do with it. But I gotta put some blame on the UFC, because if you guys would just be listening to my videos, y'all would have knew that this fight was gonna be real potential, had real potential to be a snoozer. Now, we can blame Derek Lewis a little bit. He was a little too hard on himself, though, after the fight. I mean, Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou was supposed to be the people's main event, and it ended up being, like, the worst fight of the night, possibly one of the most boring heavyweight fights in UFC history, which you could say no one expected, except for maybe me whenever I predicted it. But either way, a lot of people were looking forward to this fight, and they were really disappointed whenever this fight went not only to the full 3 rounds, but there was only like 33 strikes thrown in the whole fight. There were more strikes thrown in the first round of Miocic versus Cormier before Cormier. It wasn't even a full round because Cormier got the knockout, but there were still more strikes thrown in that one round than this entire 3-round fight between Francis Ngannou, who hits like a fucking Ford Escort, and the Black Beast Derek Lewis, who's always dangerous. If he loses early in the fight, if he's losing early, he's always dangerous even into the 3rd. But he's also known for kind of having back issues, which kind of plague him. But this was one of Derek Lewis's first boring fights in a while. I mean, he's usually a very exciting guy because you can't count him out now. It's not like he's just in fucking slugfest every fight, but it's just a guy, you know, similar to Tyron Woodley, but more fun because he's really funny outside and inside of the cage. But either way, similar to Tyron Woodley, a guy that he can always has that potential to knock you out. So even if the fight ends and it doesn't end in a knockout and it doesn't end up being the most exciting fight of the night, you are on the edge of your seat during the fight because you know at any moment Derek Lewis could knock out Francis Ngannou or whoever he's fighting. So with that being said, this was a fight that was not expected still, because I'll admit, yes, I predicted this, but I got convinced by Derek Lewis, man. He was saying shit like he's going to pay Francis Ngannou back for slavery in this fight. He said shit like, man, if I don't knock him out, I don't deserve a title shot. If I lose a decision, I should have to fight Curtis Blades. And I'm like, ooh, shit. He better come out here swinging, you know what I'm saying? Because if he wins this fight, he could get a title shot for sure. This Francis Ngannou was the #1 contender coming into this fight. But after this lackluster performance, I really don't know how many people are going to be asking for Derek Lewis to fight for the title next. And it kind of seems like that's already tied up with Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier. That shit was crazy last night, shit. But either way, Dana White is blaming Francis Ngannou's ego for the lackluster performance. This is what he had to say. He said, big time. I can tell you that his ego absolutely ran away with him. The minute that this happens to you in the fight game, you start to fall apart. I had some personal encounters with him, as did other people in the organization, and this guy's ego was out of control. And you might think, well, it might be because you guys kind of built him up really big, you know what I'm saying? His ego might have went crazy because everyone made him believe he was the fucking next heavyweight champion. We'd never seen a heavyweight like him. He hits as hard as a Ford Escort. He's at the performances too, looking amazing. Like, it wasn't just him. Francis Ngannou still seemed sometimes, and at once for sure, was a very humble guy. It wasn't until he started getting the big bucks and the body armor sponsorships and stuff and wearing the suits where maybe he started feeling, you know, a little different, feeling like, oh shit, I'm big Francis now. I'm not just fucking Ngannou, you know, that I was going to make a joke about his age, but I'm not, because the fight's over, man. Derek Lewis did that. He said something about wanting to see his birth certificate, but either way, man, yeah, Francis Ngannou's ego might have got a little carried away, but who's to blame for that? He was a very humble guy, even after he was on a knockout streak. Maybe it's the money to blame, or maybe it's some of the media and the people like, oh, you know, that were hyping him up. You know, he did build a lot of hype with those knockout wins, and after what he did to Alistair Overeem, that knockout shot, that uppercut from fucking Wakanda, it really convinced a lot of people, holy smokes, he can do this to anybody. That was one of the best strikers in the division. And so maybe his ego did run away with him, but I don't think that was his roots. I think if that is the problem, to be realistic, if that is the problem, it's something Francis Ngannou, it wouldn't be a problem for a long time, because after taking 2 losses like this and disappointing not only the fans, but it seems to disappoint Dana White as well, not only disappointing the boss, I mean, shit, you're probably going to have a reality check pretty soon, in my mind, and also having those humble roots. You know, he comes from a humble place, Francis Ngannou, so it's not like he doesn't know how to be humble. If his ego does need to be checked, I'm sure he can get that in check with some, I don't know what it's going to take, sports psychologist, something like that. Francis Ngannou, I think he'll be good in that sense, but that's not really what I'm concerned with, me personally, because after last night, I mean, Francis Ngannou made it 3 rounds, but still, I'm not sure. I still have those questions about his cardio from that Stipe Miocic fight, just because I was thinking maybe he's conserving his energy. If he goes crazy in the first round, he's going to be fucking gassed out, and Derek Lewis will for sure knock him out in the 3rd round. Could you imagine Derek Lewis, who's known for knocking guys out in the 3rd round, versus a Francis Ngannou that's completely gassed? Maybe he was in there fucking playing chess, not checkers. Like, hey, if I try and knock him out in the 1st round, I'm going to gas out, and he's for sure going to take me out the game. So Francis Ngannou pulling a Conor McGregor, conserving his energy. You know, he didn't want to be inefficient with his energy, maybe saving his energy for the later rounds. But he never ended up getting to find that shot. There was a couple moments, like 30 seconds in each round, so a total of maybe not even that, where they had some exchanges. Like Francis Ngannou was also, or not Francis, Derek Lewis was throwing some crazy switch kicks and some kicks at Francis Ngannou's head. If some of those shots would have connected, one of these guys would have been out. But they were in there being real careful and real, you know, smart, I guess you could say, smart, slow about what they were doing, about their decision making. No one was getting overzealous. Nobody got aggressive. No one ever really just pulled the trigger and risked it in there. It's like neither one of them wanted to lose. So with that being said, man, the fight turned into a shit show, but it's all good because we still get to enjoy this motherfucking prediction from your boy Mystic Taco Bell Wani. That's what I'm about to play right now. I'm gonna play the full video. This is kind of like a flashback of right after UFC 220, Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic, and it's kind of funny to hear this performance because I was kind of spot on with what was to come. So just check it out. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. Full-time family, what in the Francis 5000 Stipe Usman did we just watch? And still, UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic just defeated Francis Ngannou, the Predator, who looked a lot more like the prey in this fight tonight. I don't even know what we just watched. I'm going to keep this as respectful as possible, as I always try to, but I will say that was the most boring fight of the night that I watched personally by far. Now, Chael Sonnen and Rampage Jackson was on at the same time, and it's crazy because these competed for like most boring fight of the night, and they were the main events. That's crazy, bro. And y'all know me, man. I'm a person that it's not hard to impress me with the fight. Now, this fight was not boring because of Stipe Miocic or Stipe Usman, whatever you want to call him, for tonight. He dominated the fight, just like Kamaru Usman last weekend. But was it entertaining? No. You know who I blame for this fight? Herb Dean. What the fuck was this guy doing? Just letting Stipe Miocic, who was dominating the fight, I'm completely fine, but Stipe Miocic on the ground was just trying to take the energy out of Francis. Against the cage was just holding him down, trying to take the... And Herb was like, alright, let's work. And then would let the shit go on for like another minute of cage time of Stipe just draining Francis. Now, keep in mind, I picked I picked Stipe Miocic to win this fight. I thought he was going to get the job done. I picked Daniel Cormier and Stipe and still. Hashtag and still. You guys know I picked Stipe. He looked great tonight. Did what he needed to do versus an opponent that's a knockout artist that is 20 pounds heavier. So congratulations to Stipe Miocic, who set the heavyweight title defense record tonight. Looked great. Shut down the hype train Francis Ngannou was. But there's so many things I could talk about. So let's get into it. Fucking one thing I was thinking, me and the person I was watching the fight with, one of my boys, was like, yo, if Francis does lose this fight, it could set up Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. After the end of the fight, that is a fight I never in my life want to see. I do not want to see Francis versus Derek. That would literally remind me of Kimbo versus Dada. You remember how Kimbo and Dada both gassed out and one of them like had a fucking heart attack in the ring? If Francis Ngannou fought fucking Derek Lewis, bro, I'm a fan of both of them. It's not going to be pretty. They're both going to probably gas out unless there's a knockout in the first round. One of them niggas might pass out. They're both gassing out. One of them might pass out. That was just crazy, bro. And now, we got to be fair to Francis Ngannou. This was the biggest fight of his night. Knockout artist. He's never been to the 5th round in the UFC. First time doing that. But he looked like he was a little gassed at the end of the first round. 100%, that nigga looked like he had the wind taken out of his sails, leaving the first round, coming into the fight before the first round. This dude was sweating like he already had an energy dump or something, but it's all good. Francis Ngannou's a knockout artist. This was his toughest test to date. He's been knocking people out. Fast line to the title shot. He's definitely not experienced as the current champion, Stipe Miocic, and you could tell on the ground when he didn't know what he was doing to get out of the positions, as the commentators Joe Rogan and Dominic Cruz were explaining. They're like, he doesn't even know how to do this. He doesn't even know how to do this. And Joe Rogan was like, well, it kind of makes sense he doesn't know how to do any of this, only training MMA for 5 years. But it doesn't change the fact that this fight was not very entertaining, man. I was more entertained by Tyron Woodley Wonderboy and Kamaru Usman Emil Mek than this performance. And I'm blaming Herb Dean because there were 3 or 4 probably separate times he could have separated the fight and just brought it back to a standing exchange, which Francis Ngannou, who probably still would have lost. But we probably could have saw Stipe Miocic knock this guy out if not for Herb Dean letting him just drain his energy for fucking 4 rounds straight. Holy smokes, man. That is not how I wanted to end this night. And before we go, shout out to all the full-time MMA white belts that have hit the subscribe button. Make sure you also hit the notification bell right next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to become a full-time MMA blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, or black belt, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/fulltimemma. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.